Hi, everyone. It's Tracy from the Fairborn branch of the Greene County Public Library. I'm going to talk to you today about how to read a death certificate. So, hopefully, you can get some new information and learn some things. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. Flip over here. And sorry, I'm using a different computer today. Go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to learn how to read a death certificate. First off, there are different types of records that have been recorded for death records. People may call them death certificates. There are obituaries, church records, death indexes, gravestones, burial records, wills and probates, coroner's reports, death notices, military records, and family Bibles. These are all things that you can use to record a death or to learn about a death. Today, we're specifically going to look at a death certificate. Now, over the years, they were required at different times. So, depending on where you were when a death certificate was required by the state. So, this is an important thing to check when you're looking for a death certificate, whether it'll actually be a certificate or you may need to look for an index, which typically came before, or a census, or obituaries or church records. These are the dates that the states actually required death certificates to be written out. Prior to that, a lot were done in a death index or a record of death, and it was just simply a list of names and when the event happened, maybe some information about them. And then after death certificates were issued, they added in a place where they could add the certificate numbers. This is a typical death certificate I'm talking about. These were typical of the 1900s, just to get an idea of what they look like. This is the front of one. And I'm also going to show you the back because there are certain sections, like in here, where they ran out of room and they added more information to the back. So be sure when you look at these to look at the front and the back so you can have more information and get all the information you need. Typically, with a death certificate, there are 4 main sections, and those are what we're going to talk about next to look at to get all of the information that you possibly can out of a death certificate. The first section we have is the clerical information. This typically says what state it's from, who required it, who issued it, the Department of Health, vital statistics. Some of them may actually have the county name, and they have the state filing numbers. This is also important when you're doing your source citations. So you have like the certificate number, so people can go back and kind of double check your work, or if you need to go back for some reason, you lose your copy, you can go back and find the actual copy of it. The second section, this is where most people tend to stop looking at. This is where they get the information they want and then they quit reading, because this is your personal information about the person who passed away. You have their name, their date of death, age, when they died. Sometimes they even have months and years. Their race, sex, marital status, the location of the death, where they typically resided. So this person was in Washington County and they typically lived in Mitchell County, North Carolina, but they were actually visiting Johnson County or Johnson City, Tennessee. And if they're not there, how long they had been there. So this person was visiting, turns out visiting family for about 3 weeks before they passed away. And if they were in a hospital or institution. Over here is their normal residence where they typically lived, including the address. Again, there was more carried over on the back of this one. There's a spot for occupation, type of business. Sometimes social security numbers are listed. If they were in the armed forces, so you know if you need to look for more military records, where they were born. Sometimes these are very specific down to the city. Sometimes it's general. It may just say the state or even just US. Parents, father's name, mother, and her maiden name. And this section here is very important. People often overlook at it. It's the informant. This is the person who is providing all of this information. This can give you an idea of who was the family memory keepers, who was around the person when they passed away, um, and to give you an idea if the information stands a chance of being accurate or not. Because again, this is the person providing the information. If they didn't know the person who passed away very well, think of an estranged child giving information about a parent that they haven't had contact with for years, or a grandparent they don't know very well. It's just the next of kin. They may or may not have all the information or accurate information. Let me explain a couple situations I've run into. One was a mother who had passed away. The informant was her husband. And when the child looked at it, the date of birth was about 5 years off from what she thought how old her mother was, because mother had lied to get married earlier than what she should have. She was apparently 15 when she got married and lied and said she was 19. So when she died, the death certificate didn't match what the daughter had expected. Another example was a mother or a son, I believe this one was, had passed away. Mother was providing the information. Grandchild looked at it and was like, hey, this father's name is not who I believe it should be. Turns out it was not the same biological parent that they had thought, but a step parent had adopted the decedent at a very young age, a few months old, had been raised as their child, but was not actually the biological child, and the information came out on the death certificate. So your information may or may not be what you're expecting. But with all good genealogy research, you know you have to check and double check the information to make sure you have the right person and to make sure you're not missing anything. The third section of a death certificate is the information about the actual death. This can be important if you are looking at, is there a family history of diseases or illnesses? Is there a family history of diabetes, cancers, dementia, asthma, those types of things, and they'll show up here. Here you have the cause of death. The primary condition is usually listed first, and then any contributing factors. It also has the length of how long this happened. Then you have if there was an autopsy performed, if there were operations, findings, things like that. If it was an accident, suicide, or homicide. If there was an injury involved, when did it happen? How did it happen? And who signed off that they actually had passed away. All this information can lead to other places to look at, especially if you have an accident or a homicide. You would have reports, you would have possibly newspaper articles. If it was a big accident, it may have even been in the paper as far as like a car accident or something like that. This section here will tell you, again, if there's a family, if you start noticing a pattern of a family history. And what's interesting are these little numbers right here. Usually if you have a color copy, they're in red or blue, kind of a penciled in. Those are called ICD numbers, and they are the International Code for Diseases. Different years, as you can see here, they had different codes, so you'd have to make sure your year, this was a 54, so we used ICD-6 for this one because the ICD-7 hadn't come out yet. And what these numbers correspond to is any other conditions or, like here, infections that were prevalent along with it. So this person had pneumonia with pulmonary tuberculosis. They also had salmonella infection and chronic bronchitis. So it gives you kind of an idea of all of conditions they had, not just what they actually wrote on the death certificate. The fourth section is a section I didn't even realize until a couple of years ago how important this one actually is. And it talks about what happens to the body after death. What are they going to do with it? Is it going to be cremated? Where is it going? When is it going? So in this case, it was removed for burial. You may see cremation, you may see um, science studies, you may see different things here. When they were removed or when they were buried, where they were going, whether it was a cemetery, crematorium, things like that, and where this is located. The funeral home director or the funeral home name, where they are, and if they had to like transport it over state lines, which they did, there's a record of that, and who signed off for taking the body. This is important because it can show you, was this a family cemetery? Was other family members buried here? It may lead you to more information about them. If you can contact the cemetery where they are buried, there's typically cemetery records that you can get more information from. Or if the funeral home is still around, they may have information regarding them or the family, and that can get you more information to continue your research. So hopefully this helps you guys and you can learn about some other ways to find information about your family as well. Again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact us at the library and one of us would be happy to help you. Happy researching.